Afternoon, everyone. Lovely to meet you all. I'm in South Australia, Gawler, South Australia, about 45 minutes north of Adelaide. And Lynn has asked me to speak about the Eco Coffin Project, which is a project that we've been running in Gawler. It started in March this year. It was a 6-week program, and we're still going with it. So that's what I'm aiming to talk to you about today. So I'll just share my screen, and so Lynn, can you give me a thumbs up that that's all looking like a shared screen and you can still hear me? Fantastic. Okay. So the Eco Coffin Project is being run in conjunction with the Gawler Environment Centre, which is a not-for-profit organisation in our neck of the woods. We have 7 of these dotted around South Australia, and our focus is on helping community through different initiatives to live a sustainable life. And then we were starting to ask the question, well, death is very much a part of life. So what is, if we ask the question, what is a sustainable death, what does that look like? And then we started asking questions around the community about, in South Australia, we're lucky enough to have natural burial enshrined in our act, in our legislation. And so in South Australia, a natural burial is defined as a body being buried without being embalmed. The body can be wrapped in anything that is biodegradable, so that can be a cloth or fibre, or it can be a coffin, as long as it's just made of wood, and the wood, well, it doesn't say sustainable, but hopefully it has been sustainably grown, so no lacquers, and if there is glue used, it has to be plant-based glue. The depth of the grave is shallower than normal, so the Act says there has to be 1 metre from the tip of the nose to the top of the earth, so they dig the graves about 1.4 metres to allow for the body and a coffin if there is one. And there's no headstones, so we have to know where bodies are, so they put global positioning GPS markers, 1 at the head and 1 at the foot, and so it's all digital where they know where the bodies are, and you can run an electronic wand over it and it brings up all the details of the person who is buried there. And being a natural burial, it's not just about the individual, it's about becoming part of the ecosystem. So the 2 natural burial grounds that we have in South Australia are, it's like walking through a conservation park. So there's no headstones, there's just Indigenous plantings, there's lots of wildlife, birds, bees. In the one near us, we have kangaroos popping down, so it's absolutely beautiful. So this has been in our legislation since 2013, and we're lucky enough where I live to have 1 of the 2 natural burial grounds in our neck of the woods. So we started asking people in our area, do you know what a natural burial is? No. And did you know that we have a natural burial ground in our region? And the answer was no. So then we started to think, well, the aim of this project is to raise awareness of natural burial and the fact that this is a possibility in South Australia. So we came up with this project, the Eco Coffin Project, an interactive, informative, arts-based community program exploring what is a sustainable death and raising awareness of natural burial. So I'll go into more detail towards the end of my presentation about what that project looked like and what we did, but Lynn asked me to also speak about how this came about and why I'm involved in it. So I guess I'll be sharing my story, how I came to this space, and it's really 8 years in the making for this Eco Coffin Project. So it starts back in the 4th of April 2012 with my beautiful boy, Robbie. He had just turned 22 and he was in Newcastle doing his Masters of Architecture. And he was just a week away. We were all planned to go up for his graduation for his undergrad degree. And then this happened. That's Robbie's body is under that green tarp in his little Yaris that he called Blinky. And for some unknown reason, 22-year-old, he drove through the busiest intersection in Newcastle at speed, running a red light, and this was the result. And so he died. And so that changed everything for me, as you can imagine. And basically for all of us here, it's like sudden death just isn't part of our lives anymore, really. There's a wonderful person, Dr. Peter Saul, who I know many of you would know in this audience, and he talks about how most of us are going to die of frailty now because of our medical care and all the rest of it. So sudden death just isn't in our psyche. So it was a shock for all of us. We had nothing. We didn't understand the death system. We just let everyone lead us, and, you know, we've made decisions that can never be changed. And so I started to ask the question, how can I be in this world without Robbie? And I guess the story that I'm going to be sharing with you is that's what it looks like. I've found a way to be in this world without Robbie that is quite enlivening. It's been a wonderful journey and still is. So one of the things that happened was, keeping in mind that Robbie was wanting to be a sustainable architect, we suddenly found that we kept asking, what would Robbie want? What would Robbie want? So it was very values driven at the decisions we were trying to make. And we're in South Australia. He was living in Newcastle. He'd been living on campus. He had people all around the world that he knew. And we had to bring his body home. And we started to think about the coffins. You know, we're sitting with the funeral directors and going through those books. With every page, there was more and more bling. And we're like, oh, this so isn't Robbie. He wouldn't want it. And then I remember seeing a documentary of an Italian family who brought their coffin into their home, and they decorated it. And it was just a simple wooden coffin. And I thought, and my daughter and I thought, well, we can do that. So we said to the funeral director, we just want a plain wooden coffin. And I remember at the time, he was a bit uncomfortable at that. And finally he found the words to say, well, we do have a local guy who makes up these coffins for people who can't afford anything in the book. And I went, that's what we want. And what you're looking at in this photo is that coffin. But again, you can see I didn't know the questions to ask. That's an MDF coffin. It's got plastic, those silver handles, it's plastic. So it wasn't sustainable at all. But it was the best at the time that, you know, we were trying to make these decisions. So then it got out that my daughter and I were decorating this coffin, and people from Newcastle and then people who we'd met around the world started emailing us photos and poems and drawings for us to print and to stick on the coffin. And so this was beautiful. And then we thought, well, this is people who are remote doing this. What about the local people? So then we thought, we'll have an open day. So this is in our rumpus room at home. We had Robbie's music playing and we invited people, didn't think anyone would turn up. And just throughout the day, we had this steady stream of his friends, and we made all these craft materials available. And we just let people go. And you can see some people just sat there, not really doing much. Some people were coming in going, is Robbie's body in the coffin? And I was saying, oh no, of course not, of course not. But that's another thing I would do differently now. And this is how I've moved, that if we were doing this now, absolutely Robbie's body would be with us in the coffin. But again, we're on a learning curve, doing the best we can. So the result was that we had this amazing experience. And I've been thinking that with COVID and the pandemic, with people not being able to come together, this practice of making things sensual, that this is something that we could be doing now with people who can't attend the funerals, that they could be emailing stuff and we can be printing it and sticking it on and helping people to feel part of this process. So this is what it looked like at the funeral. It's a bit hard to see, but in the bottom right-hand corner, that's Robbie's coffin. So on that side, it was lots of paintings that had been done, and on the rest of it, it was lots of collages. And of course, Robbie's inside with all the stuff that couldn't fit on the outside. You can barely see Robbie for all the bits of paper and everything that are in there with him. So it's like all the people in the audience and watching this were able to feel that they were part of this collaboration of love, which is what I call it. So I started to get a sense of how arts-based activities are such a great way to engage people around death. So that was sort of that first sort of inkling. And then I found myself coming across these things that I know, I'm pretty sure everyone in the audience knows. If you don't, you can ask me what these things are later. But, you know, it was other people's ideas. So I came across the Death Cafe movement, and this wonderful lady in my town, Mignon, she let me use her cafe. So we close the cafe every so often and invite people in to have a death cafe, which is what you're looking at there. They were always full. It was like whatever venue I had, we always seemed to fill it. And it was just a space to facilitate a conversation around death. And again, that's very emergent. And I was blown away, like, would anyone turn up? And yes, they did. People in our neck of the woods, I could see, are just keen to talk about death. Now you can see on the left-hand side, there's a chalkboard wall. Well, then I came across the Before I Die movement from Candy Chang over in America. And so had another chat to my wonderful friend who owns the cafe. Can I use some of your chalkboard wall for this Before I Die wall? Yeah, sure. So we set this up, and people would come into the cafe and they'd write different things, and they'd you know, draw drawings, and then the mayor came in and she saw it. And then she said to apply for a community grant, and then we created a Before I Die trailer so that we could take this four-sided trailer to where the people were when we were having different public events, and it could sit there, and each of those panels come off. So sometimes we just have one panel on an easel if someone wanted it for an event, or you could put them on the wall. So it was very mobile. So that worked really well. So that was like different people's ideas that I was facilitating in my area because no one else was doing it, and I wanted to be part of it as a participant. So to do that, I had to be the facilitator as well. Then I ended up getting a job at Adelaide Cemeteries Authority, which is our state-based cemeteries authority in South Australia. And the CEO there, Robert Pitt, is amazing. He was part of the movement to have natural burials legislated in South Australia. And so, you know, I'm coming along with ideas about these death cafes, and then, you know, there's the death over dinner movement, which is normally around your dinner table at home, you have a few people. Well, we decided to do a death over dinner in West Terrace Cemetery, which is one of the most historic cemeteries in Adelaide, right on the edge of our CBD. And you can see here amongst all the graves there, the beautiful old-fashioned headstones, we've got an event happening, and we ran a death over dinner event. We had food trucks. We at the end of the evening, West Terrace Cemetery has a tour at night time where we have actors there who tell the stories of the people in the graves. So we included that as part of Death Over Dinner. So it was this magical evening that we had. So again, now this is sort of the area where it's starting to take other people's ideas and starting to adapt them to something new and emerging, suitable for our area. And part of being a social ecologist, where I'm interested in that relationship between people and nature. And when I was working at Adelaide Cemeteries Authority, we started to approach the Conservation Council of South Australia about how we can get the word out about natural burial through their audience, because they would be hopefully interested in that. The idea being that, you know, if you are a person who cares about the land and you have a bit of property in the Adelaide Hills and you don't want that to be developed when you die, the best way to stop that happening is to bury some bodies in the corner. So we were looking at like, you know, metaphorically being chained to a tree after you die so that the land won't be cleared. So this was our launch of the partnership between Adelaide Cemeteries Authority and the Conservation Council, with natural burial, with the beautiful slogan, "The earth called, it wants you back." And we have a shroud there in calico and a coffin made of beautiful sustainable wood. So that was my time at Adelaide Cemeteries Authority. And then, of course, we all know the wonderful Kerry Noonan and Groundswell and all those wonderful people who I had connected with. And then for a while there, I was doing their 10 Things to Know Before You Go workshop. I became a facilitator for that. And then that wasn't being done anymore. And then again, running that kind of evolved into my own way of doing it. And so then the Pushing Up Daisies workshop evolved from that. And this is a workshop I've put together. It's not emergent, it's a structured thing. It can be run over 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, depending on the audience, what their needs are and the time that they've got. And it's basically just letting people think about their own mortality and benchmarking it against what's happening in Australia at the moment. And then with everything that I was doing, I decided that I wanted to think deeply about that question, how can I be in this world without Robbie, which is a personal question. And that was starting to evolve into looking at death in the field of death studies and in the context of climate change. And all these other questions started to come up around social issues, political issues, and also environmental issues. And then that became a PhD, which I'm still doing, and hopefully will finish before I die. But I'm really enjoying that. I started that in 2015 on a part-time basis. And then something really exciting happened. I was asked to write a chapter in a book. So there's this wonderful book, the International Handbook of Women and Outdoor Learning. There's 62 chapters in this tome, and I'm chapter 26. My first thing I've ever published, and it's called Navigating Grief in the Outdoors to Emerge as a Bush Adventure Therapy Leader, which is something that I do. I work with kids at risk, and we take them out into the Flinders Ranges for these exercises where they're engaging with nature to really find themselves, if you like. And so I know when Robbie died, I went out into the Flinders Ranges doing a lot of different things, and the result was this chapter. So that was interesting. And then people started asking me to be a celebrant at funerals. And then, as you probably know, you don't need any qualifications to be a celebrant at a funeral. You don't even need to have a funeral. So it's more like you're a master of ceremonies. But then I had people thinking I was an authorised celebrant, and they were asking me to marry them. And I went, so I went off and I did my Cert 4 and became a marriage celebrant. So now I have this beautiful business. It's my love job where I do weddings and funerals, and I just absolutely love the funerals. And of course, the natural burial funerals are just a gift. And I have done a natural burial funeral for a Ghana elder. The Ghana people are the Indigenous people in my area, and I still can't believe the honour that I was given to be the celebrant for a Ghana elder in having a natural burial in Piluyata, which is the natural burial ground near us. And then on Tuesday, I'm doing another natural burial where the person is going to be wrapped in a shroud. So that's my first one where someone's actually being wrapped in a shroud, and that's going to be at the other natural burial ground. So this is just all this emergent, wonderful, wonderful gifts that are happening. So with that background over the last 8 years, lots of different things have been happening. I've met lots of wonderful people down in Adelaide in this space, learnt lots about what you can and can't do with our death system, and then really with a focus on my passion of natural burials, working with the Gawler Environment Centre, this Eco Coffin Project kind of brings all of that together, and then now it's about sharing that with the community. So this, what you're looking at here, is the launch. This was back at in October last year, which was our Sustainable Living Festival. And my wonderful husband, he made up this coffin in the shed for us, just out of some raw wood that was donated. And then we just had it there for people, passers-by, to do whatever they wanted to do, stick things on. You can see people have stuck music on there, kids are drawing. We made up eco glue to stick things on, decoupage. People of all ages just loved it. And so we launched the project. We said we had 10 spaces for our Eco Coffin Project, and within an hour they were gone, and we started a waiting list. And then we went out for funding, and it was one of these experiences where you're just in the zone, and people really resonated with what we're trying to do, because every time we asked people for money or to help us, they did. So we had Adelaide Cemeteries Authority as a sponsor. We had the Gawler Council as a sponsor. We had beautiful Riverdale Spiritual Centre as a sponsor, who were giving us the making and meeting space. So many organisations really believed in what we were doing, especially a lot of the councillors. They were saying we had no idea we had a natural burial ground in our area. So the 6-week project was, week 1, we did that Pushing Up Daisies workshop. Week 2, Adelaide Cemeteries Authority opened their doors on a Sunday. They gave us a behind-the-scenes tour of their crematorium, which was really interesting. And then this is Wirrawonga. This is their natural burial ground, which is probably about 5-10 minutes out of CBD Adelaide, Wirrawonga. And you can see behind, that's our group there, the group of participants for the Eco Coffin Project. And you can see behind their heads, there's some big stone slabs. Some people find it hard not to be able to have a headstone. So what they offer is these slabs, you can have your name engraved on there with the date. So there's lots of different names on those slabs. You pay extra for that. I always think when I see them, they remind me of the Flintstones, like a big slab where you're like chiseling someone's name into it, but that's just me. So we all are so individual, and we want to be remembered somehow, but not everyone chooses to do that. And then you can see just behind there, it's like native bush. Now this photo is the other natural burial ground, Piluyata, which is Ghana for peaceful ground. And this is what's in our neck of the woods. So this was what I was trying to get people to understand that we have in our local community. And this is the Eco Coffin group when we were having a site visit on that day, walking through it. So either side, you've got bodies buried there. And when the graves are settled, they plant Indigenous plantings over the graves. So you can't bring in flowers and put them on there. You can't have a headstone. You can't leave plastic things that whiz in the wind. It's just got to look like a natural park that you're walking through, and it's beautiful. They have seats that you can sit. There's lots of birds. You see kangaroos. It's just stunning. And in this one, in summer, it becomes a sea of wildflowers. It's just beautiful. So then with the project, we had the arts-based activity was that people had to choose whether they were making a shroud or a coffin out of biodegradable materials. And so 5 of the people used coffins, and we found an eco coffin that's a flat pack that we sourced from Holland. And so for our project, a flat pack is good because no one was thinking they were going to be dying anytime soon. So it's an idea that you want to be able to decorate your coffin. In fact, you can see some of the panels, the blue panel there, sort of in the middle of the screen, that's been painted blue. So it's all in these panels. It sort of goes down to about 1 metre high, and you can flat pack it away when you're finished. Perfect for our project, and it's eco-friendly, and it was around about Australian $500 delivered to my door by FedEx within 10 days from ordering from Holland. amazing. So we had 5 of those, and then 5 people decided to make a shroud. And in a moment, you'll see a clip, and that will give you an idea of the beautiful things that people are coming up with. So now, it was the most amazing thing. It's a bit like, I've seen the beautiful video that Lynette did for Tender Funerals, like the movie Tender, the documentary Tender, and that incredibly poignant story about Nigel that has always stuck with me, how the community was able to come together and help Nigel. Well, I couldn't believe it, but we had a similar thing happen with our 10 participants. One of our beautiful participants, Murray, we just had the session on the Sunday. We had to move online because of the pandemic. We couldn't meet face to face, so we started to have our meetings on Zoom. And we had Helen Roberts, who is a wonderful, well-known death doula down here, as our guest speaker. And Murray had been having this incredible conversation with Helen about, oh, you know, Helen, I'm not expecting to die for another 15 to 20 years, but when that happens, how can my family get in contact with you? Well, 2 days later, Murray died of a massive heart attack. And he had a coffin, and he had created all his designs that he wanted, that he was going to do as part of the project to decorate his coffin. And so we came together as a group to help his partner Jan, who was also a participant in our project, to help her decorate Murray's coffin the way he wanted it. And we had to do it at different times, different schedules, socially distancing. And it was just such a shocking thing that none of us were expecting that to happen, and yet it happened, and we were able to, with everything we were learning, being able to put that into practice. So that was incredibly poignant. And so the idea was that once we worked with these beautiful participants, then it was about how do we share with the wider community what we've been doing. And the aim was that we were going to have a public death cafe and the launch of a week-long art exhibition. And again, our local council had given us all this space to do that. We're promoting it. But because of COVID, we had to cancel all of that. So then now we're looking at online ways to share our stories. And I've kept a blog. There's a blog for every week that is available on the Gawler Environment Centre site. And the ABC News TV did a story on us about a week ago. And so what you're looking at here is a photo of Ben, the reporter, with the camera behind him, and interviewing a few of us. That was Jem. And so I'm going to play this video for you, and I'll stop it in, it's only just over 2 minutes, and I'll stop it for you at different points to show you some of the beautiful work that people have been doing. Just before I launched into that, does anyone have any burning questions? I've sort of been prattling on non-stop, so I'll just take a breath, and Lynn, let me know if anyone has any questions there. I can't see everyone at the moment. I think Julie has a question.
I'd just like to ask, do you need to be in that local council area to access those natural burial centres?
No, you don't, Julie. They're for the state, and they're run by Adelaide Cemeteries Authority. So one of them, Wirrawonga, that is pretty central to the CBD, and that is the one that has the most people in it. And the one up our way is not as, I think that's only been open for maybe 2 or 3 years. And again, not many people know about it. And so that's the point of this project, to get the word out. But anyone from anywhere in the South Australia, Australia, the world, anyone can be buried there. It's a public cemetery.
And one other question, as a funeral director, I understand that the real estate side of the funeral is always the expensive part, regardless of whether you've done your own coffin or you know, been able to economise. So what is the cost of the site itself? Is that similar to buying a site in a traditional cemetery?
It's a really good question, Julie, and this is probably one of the prohibitive factors why more people aren't choosing natural burial at the moment. The cost of a natural burial that you pay Adelaide Cemeteries Authority for the land is $6,600. Now, that's their cheapest, and that's their cheapest burial. Out of all the burials they offer, that is the cheapest level. Plus, it gives you a tenure of 99 years. A lot of the other burials are, I think you can only have it, you pay the money, which is more than that, and you only have the grave for something like 25 or 50 years, and then you have to keep paying a nominal fee.
Oh, okay.
The other thing with natural burials is they're single graves. With the traditional burial, you can go 3 deep. Yes. So you can only have single graves, and you can have that, and that 6,600, that covers you for 99 years. But still, it's too expensive for a lot of people. So there still is a market down here for a natural burial ground where you've got an ecosystem happening, where it's not as expensive. But yeah.
Thanks.
No, that's fine, Julie. And actually, thanks for mentioning about the funeral directors. One of our other guest speakers was our local funeral director, a family-owned company, Taylor and Forgie. And again, it's very easy being in this space where you start to learn all this information about, you know, how you can do so much yourself. It's very easy to get in this space and start that us and them thing about, you know, funeral directors are there, but we can do everything ourselves. Well, and we didn't want that to happen in our community. Taylor and Forgie is like a 5th or 6th generation family-owned business. They really, their heart is in the right place, and they know, they have all this sustainable stuff. They have shrouds, they have, they do natural burials, but no one knows about it. So we started to work with them and make them part of the project so that they can let people know that they can help people with this. And if you want to have the body at home, they can transport the body for you. They'll help you to care for the body. Whatever you want to do, they're happy to have that conversation with you. So it's been a lovely, because they were a bit worried at first, but now we're working together, and it's just been a win-win for everyone in our community, which is what you want a community project to be. So that's been a lovely outcome.
Great.
Lovely. Any other questions before I play the video? All right, I'll keep going. If I've missed anyone, because I can't see everyone, I can see Lynn, so I'll let Lynn stop me. Okay, so I will just play this.
It's a topic most of us balk at discussing: death and funerals. One group of people north of Adelaide is facing up to mortality, making their own coffins and planning funerals that are kinder to the environment. But the participants needed to use their skills much sooner than expected.
Macabre though it might seem, these people are preparing to die in a way that will reduce their environmental footprint.
And we're trying to move from a fossil fuel economy to a renewables economy. And yet it's like all that thinking goes out the window when we die. So I'll just stop here as we get a showcasing all the things people are doing. So this is what I'm working on for my shroud, or I call it my shroud cocoon. And it started off with all Robbie's, I've still got all Robbie's clothes. And so all his cotton t-shirts, my daughter cut the panels out, and she's made a memory quilt from the panels, but I kept all the scraps, and I've made all the yarn up, and I thought, well, I'm going to crochet a shroud. And I got my inspiration from this, Lynn, from, is her name Jan, the artist who made the paper yarn and crocheted her own shroud for Garments of the Grave. I can't hear you, Lynn.
Yeah, that's Pam Thorne.
Pam, yes. And I've spoken with Pam, and I'm a crocheter. So when I saw that paper Garments for the Grave exhibition that you wonderful people in Tasmania right in this space, I just thought that's beautiful what Pam did. So that's where my inspiration came from. Like you're always inspired by other people with what you're doing. So thanks to Pam, I got this idea to crochet a shroud out of Robbie's cotton t-shirts. I ran out of them. So then I started to ask friends and family and people I know, could you donate any old, much loved cotton t-shirts? So now I'm creating this beautiful thing that's going to wrap me with my life pretty much from memories of people who I've shared my life with. So that's that one there.
Crocheting and felting shrouds with natural fibres and painting flat pack Eco Coffin.
It's a topic most of us bulk,
sorry.
making their own coffin to use their...
People are preparing to die in a footprint.
And we're trying to move economy, and yet it's like all that thinking goes out the window when we die.
They're crocheting and felting shrouds with natural fibres and painting flat pack.
Right. So this is a mother and daughter team, and you can see they're doing a shroud and a coffin, and you can see against the back wall there. There's they're the side panels of the coffin, and they're really. They come from Northern Territory, and so they really resonate with the desert, and you can see the beautiful colours that they're painting on the side of the coffin there, and they're working on painting little zebra finches at the moment on there. Oh, you can see another one of the panels on the far left that's just blue.
Eco coffins.
I've always hated the idea of fancy coffins and all of that, and I've ended up getting a cardboard coffin. So that's my purpose to go over that.
Jen.
Oh, so that quilt that Jem was showing you, she's a textile artist, and she had this barley material, cotton batik material, and she had all these beautiful silk scraps that she collected over the years. So she made this incredible quilt out of silk and cotton and did that Japanese stitching that's become quite popular now. I've forgotten what it's called, but instead of trying to hide the stitching, you make a feature of it. So she has this beautiful quilt that she's going to put over her coffin. And then what we're looking at here is another lady. She decided to make a Nuno blanket. And Nuno, I found out, is a felting technique where you felt wool and silk together. So she's, and she also gave me this idea about having if you're going to make something for your body, if you can use it during life as well, it's multi-purpose. So she's making this blanket that she'll use when she goes to retreats, but it's going to be her shroud when she dies as well.
And April and her partner Murray signed up with long-term expectations.
I'm not ready to go yet, so say 10 or 15 years' time, what you see as your role in.
But days after that session, Murray had a heart attack and died. His final days spent in lockdown with Jan.
We were so lucky to be put into this situation, the isolation with all the things that we could share together, with art and music and all those sort of things. But sadly, by the next morning he was gone, so we never had that opportunity, but happy memories.
Murray's family and friends helped plan his farewell and decorate his coffin using designs he'd created just days earlier.
It's just been made beautiful because of this project. It was really nice to have something to do for Jan and Murray, and I was happy to help in that way.
Murray's death has made the Eco Coffin Workshop even more important to its dozen members. They've been meeting online and talking about how to die greener. Most Australians choose cremation, a method that emits both CO2 and mercury. Some people are now choosing a natural burial. This park in Adelaide's northern suburbs was established a decade ago and was the first site in Australia where that could take place. Bodies are placed in biodegradable.
I'll just stop you here. This is Wirrawonga. This is the one that's close to Adelaide CBD.
Coffins or wrappings, and their graves marked with trees instead of headstones. For Jan Abel, conversations about death can't happen soon enough.
you just don't know. And it's going to be a loss tomorrow. You just don't. So that our community is our best to plan beautiful things like this. It's wonderful.
Both for people and the environment. Ben Nielsen, ABC News, Gawler.
All right, so I hope that gives you a bit of an overview of this project just in our neck of the woods, and I hope I've honoured all the people who have inspired me over the last 8 years, both locally, through the eastern states, through Groundswell, through Tender Funerals, through Pam, all the work that Lynn and Community Coffin Club are doing. Because we were actually thinking about doing a coffin club, you know, like in New Zealand with Katie with the coffin clubs. We were looking at doing something like that with the men's shed in Gawler. But then we thought, the Gawler Environment Centre is project-based, and we do a lot more than just around sustainable death. And so we didn't feel we had the resources to be able to start a club, and so that's why we're project based. So again, it's like all the influences that and the wonderful people I've met over the last 8 years, I hope you can see how it's kind of morphed into something that's right for our space and time with our natural burial ground here in Gawler. So that's it. I'm open to any questions that anyone may have, and I'll stop sharing the screen now. And we're back there. Oh, it's saying that.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please do.
It's Denise here from Tender Funerals Mid North Coast. I'm just really curious how your work integrates with traditional funeral services. So you know, is there an openness and receptivity there to actually cooperate with these initiatives?
My response, Denise, is that when people, the conversation usually goes, oh, have you heard about natural burial? No, what is it? And then I'll explain what natural burial is, and people go, oh, I want one. How do I get one? Oh, that's amazing. I never knew. And then we start that process, and then that's when people will engage with it. But it's just, people just don't know. But my experience is once they do know, yes, they want to be involved with it, with an understanding that every death is different. So some deaths you may want to have the body at home or not, and all of that. So it's about starting that conversation and empowering people to have that conversation with the funeral director. We've still got a long way to go down here, Denise. Perfect example is next Tuesday, I've got that natural burial at Wirrawonga, and the funeral director, it's not my local one, it's someone else, and he's great. But when I saw the client the other night and we were talking about, they're not going to have it in a chapel at all, we're going to be just around the gravesite. And so, you know, we just wanted their person to be there in the shroud over the gravesite as everyone arrived. But the conversation she was having with the funeral director, he was pushing her a different way. Oh, the hearse is going to come up, the body's going to be in a coffin, we're going to lift it out. And then we didn't want any of that. So then she said to me, can you go and have the conversation with the funeral director? Because she is emotional. She wasn't empowered. She wasn't confident in what she's saying. So as we all are around this table today, I'm sure it's the same wherever you are. It's about getting this information out there so it becomes normal, that word normalised.
Yeah.
Did that answer
Thank
your
you.
question?
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you so much for sharing. It's very inspirational. It's a shame that we don't have access to the same sort of facilities in New South Wales yet. Hopefully that will come.
Well, I think
or not in my area anyway.
No, I think most states do have, you can have the option of natural burial. Everyone defines it slightly differently. But I think we're the only state that actually has it in the Act, and it's very clear what it is.
Yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong. I'm